Between the years 1948 to 1958, La Violencia, a 10-year war, raged in Colombia. It devastated the countryside. It caused upheaval and economic distress in those areas and at large in the country. La Violencia is considered to have begun with the assassination on April 9, 1948 of George Gaetan, a Liberal Party presidential candidate for the 1949 November election. His murder provoked the Bogotazo rioting, which lasted 10 hours and resulted in around 5,000 casualties.
Parte de la revolución. En este momento, Bogotá está en llamas y en poder del pueblo liberal, del ejército liberal y de la policía liberal.
It was proposed that the Conservative Party return to power following the election of 1946 to be the cause of La Violencia. It is estimated to have cost the lives of at least 200,000 people, almost 2% of the population of the country at that time. But little did anyone know, it was a perfect cesspool of a situation to mold and form Pedro Lopez, the monster of the Andes. Pedro Alonso López, a native of Colombia, has charges of more than 300 murders on his resume, and as I mentioned earlier, no one could match him, since in addition to murder, he was a pedophile and rapist who murdered and raped almost every day until his arrest, and then also because his disappearance still remains an enigma for Latin America society. Today, we are going to look at the darkest being in Colombia, and if I dare say the entire West, Pedro Alonso López, the monster of Los Andes. Before starting the video, I invite you to leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Without further ado, let's get started. Due to horrible childhood circumstances, which may have breeded one of the most atrocious serial killers I believe in history, also to add to the place and time that he had grew up in only supported his gruesome behavior. Pedro was born on October 8, 1948 in Santa Isabel, Colombia. His life was strongly marked by sexual violence since he was a young boy. During the time that Pedro was born, to 1958, the country was in the midst of La Violencia, a 10-year civil war between the Colombia Conservative Party and the Liberal Party. So we can only imagine the problems that the people faced just to survive. Also, the amount of lawlessness that was in the society at that point of time. According to Pedro, his mother was a prostitute with 13 children. She caught him fondling his youngest sister in 1957 when he was 8 years old and was evicted from the family's home. He was then picked up by a man, taken to a deserted house, and repeatedly sodomized. At age 12, he was taken in by an American family and enrolled in a school for orphans. He ran away because he was allegedly molested by a male teacher. We could see where Pedro's loss of faith in humanity had started from. At 18, he stated he was gang raped in prison and had killed 3 of the rapists while still incarcerated. So, as we know, he was kicked out of home because of the incident where he fondled his sister. It is reported that Pedro has sexually assaulted his younger sister, in fact several times, until his mother found out about her, and she beat him so much that she threw him out of the house when she got tired of it. Understanding the situation of extreme poverty that Pedro's family and the city experienced, the coup against the government, having the entire country under a dictatorship, brings out a primal behavior in people, and especially lawlessness. Pedro, being now homeless, met several horrible people who molested him at that young age. Also, in his torturous search for a home after he was kicked out, he was involved in several knife fights, from which he almost died. As we know, a family of Americans adopted him at the age of 12. Now he had a new house, friends, and school, but history repeated itself Now, with a loss for trust in humanity, he ran away and was back on the streets. From that moment, a life of crime was the only other option. His specialty at that point in time was car theft for quite some time. Eventually, at 21, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison. This was another pivotal part in his life. This is where I think Pedro snapped. On his second day behind bars, 18-year-old Lopez was gang raped by 4 older inmates, a risk run by young men in jails the world over. Instead of reporting the crime, Lopez fashioned himself a crude knife and went out for revenge, killing 3 of his assailants in the next 2 weeks. Authorities described the homicides as self-defense and tacked a token of 2 years onto Pedro's standing sentence. When he was released from prison, Pedro traveled to his new home, Peru, where he initially began his murderous tirade against the indigenous population, particularly girls from poorer families between the ages of 9 and 12. This, I believe, was a calculated decision, as the police was not too considerate when it came to the disappearance of little girls, as it was thought that they just ran away from home because of poverty. His specialty appeared to be abducting children from Indian tribes, but the technique backfired when he was captured by a group of Ayacacho in northern Peru. While attempting to kidnap a 9-year-old girl, Lopez was beaten by his captors, stripped and tortured. The Ayacacho were prepared to bury him alive when a female American missionary intervened, convincing Pedro's captors that they should deliver him to the police. They grudgingly agreed, and Lopez was deported within days. Peruvian authorities declined to waste any valuable time on the Indian complaints. Once more at liberty, Lopez began traveling widely through Colombia and Ecuador, selecting victims with impunity. A sudden rash of missing girls in 3 adjacent nations were ascribed to the activity of slavery or prostitution rings, but the authorities had no firm evidence, no suspects, prior to April 1980, when a flash flood near Ambato, Ecuador uncovered bodies of 4 vanished girls. Days later, Carvina Provida observed Lopez leaving the Plaza Rosa marketplace with her 12-year-old daughter, Maria. Summoning help, she pursued him, and Pedro was captured by the townspeople. He was held for the police, who began to suspect that they might have a madman in custody. In the face of Pedro's continuing silence, police tried a different stratagem. Dressing a priest, Father Cordoba Gordino, in prison garb, they placed him in a cell with Pedro, leaving Gordino to win the suspect's confidence, swapping stories of real or imagined crimes late into the evening. At length, when the padre had heard enough, Lopez was confronted with the evidence of his own admission. He broke down, making a full confession. In his confession, he stated that he would force the girls to have sex with him and put his hands around their throat. When the sun came up, he strangled them, and would admit was only good if he could see their eyes. He stated that he never killed anyone at night. It would have been a waste in the dark. He had to see them in the daylight. He also stated that there was a divine moment when he put his hands around the girl's neck and watched the light fade from their eyes. Only those who kill would know what he meant. These were words that denote a totally rotten and twisted-minded person. It even sounds strange that it could come from a human being. His famous nickname, the Monster of Los Andes, was not given for a random reason. The reason was that Pedro in Peru murdered 100 indigenous girls in total between 9 to 12 years old. After raping and murdering them, he sometimes practiced necrophilia on their bodies. He stated that he generally kidnapped and raped indigenous people because other girls had parents who cared for them and watched them a lot, according to him. There was a situation in which a tribe from Peru almost killed him, since he tried to kidnap a girl. She got away, and the clan followed him until they grabbed him and buried him in the sand. throwing honey on his face so that the ants would feast on his skin. Again, he was able to escape as an American missionary showed up to free him, promising the tribe that she would take him to the authorities. It is not known if he escaped from her or she just freed him, but he never ended up in the authorities' hand as she has promised. The kidnappings and murders did not stop there. Between 1978 and 1980, the number of deaths and disappearances had increased violently in countries like Ecuador and Colombia mainly. In those years, the dictatorship, it was believed that these disappearances were caused by the tyrannical government, but it was just Pedro and his appetite to kill. Lopez was arrested when an attempted abduction failed and he was trapped by the market traders. He confessed to over 300 murders. The police only believed him when a flash flood uncovered a mass grave of many of his victims. According to the BBC, he was arrested in 1980 but was freed by the government in Ecuador at the end of the last year of 1998 and deported to Colombia. In an interview from the prison, Lopez described himself as the man of the century and said he was being released for good behavior. An A&E biography documentary reported that he was released by an Ecuadorian prison on 31st August 1994 and rearrested an hour later as an illegal immigrant. He was handed over to Colombian authorities who charged him with a 20-year-old murder. He was found to be insane and held in a psychiatric wing of the Bogota hospital. In 1998, he was declared sane and released on a $50 bail. Whoa, $50? The same documentary says that Interpol released an advisory for his rearrest. He has not been heard of or seen since the release, and to date, no one knows if Lopez is dead or alive. This was the story of Pedro Alonso Lopez, the monster of the Andes. If you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel to see more similar videos and activities. Thank you and have a good day.